I have a lot to tell you about Tennessee and what we're going through, but the most important part of my speech is this statement. A false friend is more dangerous than an open enemy, and that's what we're fighting, the false friends. I was born and raised in Chicago. Illinois is now the #1 indebted state in the Union. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and have for 25 years. Tennessee is voted twice the most corrupt state in the Union. So I've gone from the frying pan to the fire, basically. The governor of Tennessee is Bill Haslam. Haslam is co-owner of Pilot Oil and Flying J. I want you all to keep that in mind. He's an oil man. He's a pro-UN Agenda 21 governor. And like the rest of the phony right, he is in favor of vouchers and charter schools. Prior to Haslam's election to governor in 2010, we had a moratorium on charter schools in the state of Tennessee. He's now lifted that moratorium. His bagman, Majority Senate leader in our legislature, Mark Norris, who is an ALEC member and an ACER member, Tennessee ACER, carried the bill to passage allowing unlimited charter schools in the state of Tennessee. Want ads in our local paper are now advertising for Knox County schools to issue requests for charter school proposals. And Governor Haslam is also eyeing adding funding to pre-K, here it is, pre-K, and creating a larger voucher system in the state of Tennessee. It was in 2008 when he was City of Knoxville Mayor, Haslam and the leftist Chamber of Commerce boys in Knoxville put their school board posse onto a jet up to Boston to fetch down a fresh Eli Broad-trained graduate to begin Knox County's transition to corporatized schools. The Knoxville School Board selected by a 5-4 vote Boston's James McIntyre as superintendent of Knox County schools. This followed the backroom machinations by our then city mayor Bill Haslam, who in 2010 actually bought the governorship with $28 million of Pilot Oil's money. Now we have Bill Gates and Eli Broad's chief edu-stooge among Southern governors, and that's Haslam. Oh, and another thing, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is spending $1.1 million on their galvanic skin response bracelets to see if they can measure whether students find their teachers engaging. So I'm wondering how long it'll be before our governor brings in bracelets for the children of Tennessee. As a matter of fact, this morning, Polly and I looked up how much this superintendent makes. The list is unconscionable what we're giving this guy. $228,800 is his base, plus perks, plus $144,000 from the board over a period of a year, and $800 a month for auto expenses. That does include everything. If that isn't enough, U.S. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan and Governor Bill Haslam participated in a forum on education reform in June of 2011. Knox County School Superintendent James McIntyre served as moderator of the panel discussion, and Haslam was pushing measures for more vouchers in the state of Tennessee to open more charter schools. The Gates Foundation, the Walton Family Foundation, and the Eli and Edith Broad Foundation form a powerful trifecta. The combined net worth of these three families who operate these foundations is $152 billion. These three foundations have been able to steer the direction of education reform over the past decade by strategically employing their immense wealth in training school leaders like our superintendent, financing think tank reports, and supporting AstroTurf advocacy groups. The Broad Foundation is the least wealthy of the three, but it still has spent nearly $400 million on its mission of transforming urban K through 12 public education through what they say is better governance, management, labor relations, and competition, of course. But countless Eli Broad graduates who have become infamous superintendents of schools have all used a top-down dictatorial approach. Most have alienated the parents of the children. Many have closed many, many schools. A number have had questionable audits on their watch. More than one has had false or questionable data to support their reforms. All have commanded large salaries with perks, while at the same time slashing the services for the children and closing the schools in the name of financial scarcity. A number of them avoided informing, this is important, the elected school board of their plans or activity and actually withheld their activities information from the school board. I don't know if any of you know about the state of Tennessee's former congressman, but one of Broad's newest board of directors is none other than Representative Harold Ford Jr., a former 5-term congressman and chairman of the Democratic Leadership Council. His bio states, Ford is currently managing director and senior client relationship manager at Morgan Stanley and professor of public policy at New York University's Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Service. On the House Committee on Education and Workforce, catch that, Ford sought results-oriented solutions to address issues of American workforce preparedness and social challenges faced by faith and community-based groups. If you don't think your Christian churches are involved, you're making a big mistake. Knoxville's Eli Broad trained superintendent, James McIntyre, is pushing for STEM curriculum schools, magnet schools, replacing all of the public schools in Knox County with charter schools, and funding teachers with stimulus grant money from Race to the Top. Tennessee is one of the first 2 states to win Race to the Top funding in 2009 and thus received a waiver of No Child Left Behind. Race to the Top requires certain education policies, as all of you know, such as performance-based standards for teachers, complying with nationwide standards, promoting charter schools, and computerization. In order to be eligible for these grants, the state had to adopt the Common Core state standards, which are now fully implemented in the whole state of Tennessee. Common Core standards, of course, are funded by the governors and state school chiefs with additional support from that bastion of conservative ideology, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. Since his appointment as superintendent, McIntyre has been a faithful water carrier for the Tennessee Business Roundtable agenda, as witnessed in his supporting of teacher bonus pay for test scores, downsizing instructional and non-instructional personnel, outsourcing public jobs such as janitorial services to corporations, and marginalizing teachers and the Knox County Education Association. McIntyre has also been at the forefront of making State Tennessee Comprehensive Assessment Program, that's TCAP, test scores a significant part of student grades. As a result of his recommendation, the Knox County School Board passed a plan last January of this year to make TCAP scores count 15% of student school grades. So if economically disadvantaged and special needs children were not being treated unfairly enough already, now they have an additional disincentive for going to school. Since 1965, the southern states, and this is from Schar's work, have traditionally had the lowest education scores since the Skinnerian direct instruction training experimentation has been used on them. While the northern states remained academically focused, they always had higher scores. The change has come with all of the states now implementing the Skinnerian workforce training. Because the southern states are now teaching to the tests, and the tests are on the training, the scores for the southern states are rising. 2 years in a row, this has been our headlines in late July. TCAP scores rise. And Governor Haslam actually announced that, and he was absolutely thrilled that our subjects of reading, math, science, and social studies had been raised. Unfortunately, the children are deliberately being dumbed down for the global workforce. Now the latest stealth attack by corporate stooge Superintendent McIntyre comes in the form of a brazen attempt to put himself in charge of deciding which schools in Knoxville will be converted to the corporate welfare charter schools. Conversion of existing schools to charters may be initiated through reorganization decisions made by the director of schools, that's him, through charter decisions by the Board of Education, or through consideration of charter petitions by 75% of the faculty and or 75% of families at the school to be potentially converted. What we're wondering is who gave McIntyre the authority to institute the constitutionally challenged parent trigger to change her closest school, and where is our Board of Education? And I'll tell you where they are later. We just had an opportunity in Knoxville to elect a school board member who understands what is going on. She knew about charter schools. She knew about choice and vouchers. She knew about Agenda 21. She has Charlotte's book, which I gave her, 6 months ago, and she read the whole thing. Brilliant, brilliant young woman. She was defeated. Another man that was going to be our district a representative in the new 89th district. He's our former sheriff. He was our sheriff for 5 terms. He would not go along with the corporate corruption in Knoxville. He would not pay the cronies, and he ran for our representative. And he knew all about Agenda 21. He was a brilliant man. He lost by 600 votes to a man who spent a whole lot of thousands of dollars that I am sure came from Governor Haslam. So, let's go to the workforce. On August 1st, 2012, local business leaders told Governor Haslam they do not have enough qualified workers with specific goals, a high work ethic, and critical thinking abilities. College and university leaders, meanwhile, were telling them they need more resources to adequately educate and graduate more students to fill those jobs. This is workforce again, folks. The exchange was part of an hour-long roundtable hosted by none other than the governor at Scripps Network's Interactive West Knoxville. Haslam brought together local business executives and college leaders to discuss how the state's higher education system can better meet its workforce needs. After the meeting, the former Knoxville mayor said this, and I quote, "It's a crying shame in today's economy where we have huge unemployment that there's still a lot of good jobs going unfulfilled because we haven't prepared people for it, whether it be a welder or an engineer. We're trying to have those conversations around the state to make certain we're providing positions that will train people for the jobs that are there today." Unquote. The meeting focused entirely on matching the education system to the job market, but Haslam has said he also wants to examine costs and accessibility. The governor said he expects to have legislation to put before the next General Assembly, and I can only imagine what that's going to do to the state of Tennessee. Haslam's close friend and ally is Senator Lamar Alexander. In fact, it was Lamar Alexander's son who introduced a woman named Samar Ali to Alexander, who is now the state of Tennessee's Director of Sharia Finance. But let me tell you more about Alexander and education. Alexander doesn't just want preschools, he wants the babies the minute they're born and before, and here's how he'd do it. This is what he said: "The private sector is charging ahead, helping clear the way for reform. One of the ways privatization can clear the way is by avoiding the accountability due elected officials. Sure, there are no elected officials. Dr. Hamburg, chief negotiator for the Soviet exchange, admitted, quote, within a quote, privately endowed foundations can operate in areas government may prefer to avoid. Let me read that again. Privately endowed foundations, this is not elected officials, can operate in areas government may prefer to avoid. Yeah, by getting rid of the elected officials. At the 1989 Governor's Conference, Lamar Alexander stated, I would go down to the maternity ward of the local hospital, or whatever you call the part of the hospital where the nurses are, who are there when the babies are born, find out how many babies are born out of wedlock, how many babies are born with single parents. Just so you know that. I would think the brand new American school would be open year-round from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. A second characteristic might be that these schools will serve children from age 3 months old to age 18. Wait, it gets worse. This may be a shocking thought to you, but if you were to do an inventory of every baby in your community and think about what the needs of those babies were for the next 4 or 5 years, you might see that those needs might not be served any other way. They have to be served in some way, and maybe around the school. Or, if you study a little more, you might go back and think the school might have to serve the pregnant mother of the baby in terms of prenatal care. Haslam is actually aiming for this in the state of Tennessee. Okay, a few months ago, and Charlotte helped me with my speech before the commission, Superintendent McIntyre asked for a $35 million increase in school funding. They said it was because the teachers need a raise, but we knew that it was to give 60 of the bureaucrats increased monies. At the county commissioners' meeting, they listened to the community, and over 45 people spoke for 3 minutes each. Our county mayor is Tim Burchett, and his proposed budget did not include the $35 million. Union members for the schools filled the auditorium and spoke. They were 9-1 compared to us. When I spoke to the commission, I asked them why we'd want to keep throwing money at the schools and getting lower test scores. I told about direct instruction, Pavlovian and Skinnerian agreement training. I told about the Carnegie Corporation and the Soviet US Ed agreements. The next day, the local paper referred to me as a conspiracy theorist. The $35 million request failed, however. Our Knoxville schools, and this is important, this is amazing money, are 62% of our county budget. And that does not include the cafeteria or maintenance and operations, which brings the total cost to an annual 75% of the county budget for Knox County schools. The total school funding for Knox County per year is over $400 million, and we have less than 500,000 people in our county. The very next night, after this commission meeting, which we won, yes, I was at the Communist Pro-Agenda 21 Council for West Knox County Homeowners, and our mayor came in to speak, and he told about these figures, of which I got a copy. He told about the budget, and then he told about a new reading program wherein the reading level of the children was brought up exponentially in a short period of time. I know y'all can guess what they were doing. I raised my hand and I asked him, what is the name of the program, and is it truly phonics-based? He talked around the subject like politicians do, gave me no answer, so Kelleigh's, Mayor, Mayor. I raised my hand again and I said, but Mayor, what's the name of the program, and is it phonics-based? He told me to call his office the next morning. But before I left, I gave him a copy of Char's new book. And do you know what he said to me? And this is a plus. He said, I've had everybody telling me about this book and that I needed to get it. He said, may I pay you for it? I said, you can pay me by reading it. And he is reading it. So, the reading program our mayor is so thrilled about is called Voyager. Voyager Reading Instruction is one of several programs, along with Reading Mastery, which uses scientific research-based instruction, which is Skinner, and is nothing more than Siegfried Engelmann's direct instruction dog training. It apparently was designed for disabled students and was first used on minorities, as Shar has written, and is being used, as far as I can tell, now on all of the students of Knox County. The math follows the core curriculum. It is, of course, a computer course that uses a timer and colored dots for reinforcement. It's the same old stuff. I checked the cost online, and it's very, very expensive. And of course, reading gains are shown from 1st to 3rd grade, but then drop precipitously in 4th and 5th grade. So I called the mayor's office and I asked for a luncheon appointment. I gave him document after document, and I even gave him one of Shar's 1999 books because it has an index. And I marked the things in the index, and I copied all the papers from the book online and stuck in there. And I had a good hour lunch with him, which he ended up telling me, here's what I want you and your people to do. I want you to get to the legislature, and I want you to change the law to where our superintendents are elected. I said, fine, another job. But we'll do it. We'll really try. Okay, now I want to look at who's behind all of this, because this is very telling on who in the right is doing everything. Of course, in 1934, as Charles mentioned, the Carnegie Corporation said we're going to use the schools to change the U.S. from a free market system to a planned economy. And in a planned economy, as in communist countries, the administration chooses at an early age what your child will do all through their lives. They want your child to decide by 5th grade. I don't know about all of you, but I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. This plan was carried out with the signing of the education agreements by President Ronald Reagan with the Soviet Union in 85 and 88. And the Soviet Polytech system is being implemented right now, with students being tracked into specific training at an early age to suit the needs of the corporate fascist global economy. Vouchers and education choice originally came from the left and was sold to the right. Now both the right and left support this shift in emphasis from academics to workforce training. This is proven by the fact the elite from both parties, including the globalist New World Order U.S. Chamber of Commerce, if you go on News with Views and read Erica Carl's 3-part article on the Chamber, you'll find out exactly what they are. The International Aspen Institute, of which UN Agenda Maurice, he pronounces it Morris, Strong was director. President Obama, his Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, the Heritage Foundation, and all other neocon Trotskyite groups, and the Globalist Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you, Sam, for the prelude to that. Founded in 1921 by the global-minded Rockefellers. All of them support charter and vouchers. Chris Whittle's Edison Project. Anybody remember that? It was started in Knoxville, Tennessee, where I live. It was an early pioneer in public-private partnerships in K-12 education in America, and they have countless members and financiers such as Vanderbilt University professor and former Assistant Secretary of Education in the Reagan administration, Chester Finn, a noted neocon education change agent who is deeply involved in the school choice workforce training agenda, and John Chubb of the liberal Brookings Institution and Center for Education Innovation. The words of John Chubb and Terry Moe of the Brookings Institute and Stanford University, respectively, quote, and I'm going to read this twice, "Our guiding principle in the design of a choice system is this: public authority must be put to use in creating a system that is almost entirely beyond the reach of public authority. Our guiding principle in the design of a choice system is this: public authority must be put to use in creating a system that is almost entirely beyond the reach of public authority. They will control our children cradle to grave. This is the elimination of the school boards, elimination of community input, and as Shar calls it, blatant taxation without representation. Chubb was on the executive committee of the Center for Educational Innovation, an independent project of the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research, another neocon group loaded with CFR members like Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice. The center's work is made possible by grants and gifts from the Chase Manhattan Bank, Exxon Education, the Lauder Foundation, and the Rockefeller Foundation. Another proponent is the Aspen Institute, the globalist Aspen Institute. Lawrence C. Pierce delivered a paper to Aspen in 1976 entitled School Site Management, which calls for education vouchers. School site management was an early term used by the NEA in the 80s and 90s. The call for the use of vouchers, which will supplant choice, is essential for the International School to Work program. And globalist World Federalist member Mortimer Adler was one of the most visible facilitators for the Aspen Institute of Humanistic Studies, which was developed in the 40s. This is real interesting. The group is responsible for training most of our government leaders in the dialectical process of reaching consensus. His book, called The Medea Proposal, was used to introduce the concept of charter-type schools into mainstream school reform via consensus. The director of Aspen, Walter Isaacson, makes a base pay of $760,425 a year. The left started the whole voucher choice charter school designs for American education. It's been sold to the nation's conservatives by the Heritage Foundation. So let's take a look at them and their UN agenda connections. The 1955 UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization book, Mental Health in Education, is the earliest reference for the need for choice in education. The charter schools concept, strongly marketed around the country by heritage affiliates in every state, including mine, attempts to link patriotic free enterprise themes to a blatantly unconstitutional system of corporate fascism to business-government partnerships in the education of our children. Today, Edwin J. Fulner is the president of Heritage Foundation. His yearly income, including deferred compensation, is, please don't send $25 a month to Heritage, $1,098,612. Former Attorney General Edwin Meese, who is older than dust, takes home $500,000 a year from Heritage. For what? His name. Fulner is a charter member of the Council for National Policy, as was the original president and co-founder of Heritage, Paul Weyrich, until Paul retired in '74 and started other things. So who's the Council for National Policy? They're a right-wing group founded in '81 by oil man Nelson Bunker Hunt, Dominionist Pat Robertson of Christian Broadcasting Network, Tim LaHaye, who finds no problem in accepting millions from cultist Sun Myung Moon, and T. Cullen Davis of Texas, twice tried for murder and attempted murder of his wife and her friend. The Council for National Policy was allegedly founded to counter the Council on Foreign Relations, but on the first membership roster, on the board, were 5 Council on Foreign Relations members. Richard Mellon Scaife of Chase Mellon Bank and heir to the Carnegie Mellon fortune has been on the Board of Trustees of Heritage since 1985, and the Sarah Scaife Foundation has donated $16 million to Heritage. They initially funded them with $900,000 to get them off the ground. There were other financiers of Heritage: Amoco, General Motors, Chase Manhattan through David Rockefeller, and Olin and Bradley, a right-wing foundation. Fulner was recruited in '77 by Richard Mellon Scaife to become Heritage's president. One must remember that Scaife funds both sides of the aisle and is a strong pro-abort and proponent of taxpayer-funded Planned Parenthood. And Heritage's Richard Allen, this is from Shar's article, but I have a list of the members, and Richard Allen was a CNP member as well. Heritage's Richard Allen first proposed the idea of creating a North American free trade zone from the Yukon to the Yucatan. In Charlotte Iserby's recent article on Heritage Foundation, she states, and I quote, "What we are looking at now in education is a result of NAFTA, which got the ball rolling in the development of workforce skills standards by the National Skills Standards Board, endorsed by the U.S. Labor Department Secretary's Commission on Achieving Necessary Skills." This study originated under Labor Secretary Elizabeth Dole in 1990 and eventually led to the School to Work Opportunities Act and the dumbing down of American education curriculum for workforce training, unquote. And from education researcher Shay Simonton's article on Rockefeller Heritage Connection, she states, "The top man of the Heritage Foundation, first Weyrich and now Ed Fulner, with the trust and cooperation of masses of sincerely committed conservatives, have been in position to further elitist Rockefeller goals. Along with radical world government advocate Walter Hoffman of the World Federalist Association, they participated on the 16-member UN Commission on Improving the Effectiveness of the United Nations. Working with the U.S. Information Agency, Fulner also participated in facilitating the infamous 1985 U.S.-Soviet Education Technology and Cultural Exchange Agreement. Soviet pedagogy based on behavioral conditioning for a compliant collective labor force is a dream come true for the dozens of multinational corporations funding all the think tanks promoting American education reform. The Humanist Carnegie Foundation, a century-long collaborator with Rockefeller Philanthropy, facilitated the Soviet side of this exchange agreement," unquote. Heritage's communist connections were established rapidly after the historic meeting between Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev at the Geneva Summit. Fulner was appointed by Reagan as chairman of the U.S. Advisory Commission on Public Diplomacy. The commission was responsible for expediting a signed Soviet-American education exchange agreement. At the same time, please note that Heritage founder Paul Weyrich once served as advisor to former Russian President Boris Yeltsin. Both Fulner and Weyrich were also involved with other powerful players and shadowy figures, some from the right and some from the left. They have been included in groups formed to reinvent the United Nations, supposedly to face the 21st century. In fact, it is becoming more and more evident that Weyrich and Fulner were in fact organizing a tight group that represented the merger of right and left, which we have seen over the past 65 years. Fulner carries on as president of Heritage. Now I'm going to switch topics to our governor and Agenda 21, but it all feeds together. Tennessee House Joint Resolution 587 in Tennessee denounced the destructive and insidious nature of UN Agenda 21. It was passed by Republican legislatures over Democratic complaints that it buys into a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. The resolution was approved 72 to 23 in the House and by a 19 to 11 vote in the Senate. This is, however, a non-binding position statement by the General Assembly, not a law that is implemented. Our Republican governor, Bill Haslam, actually refused to sign this resolution, and it was the first one since his election to governor in 2010 that he has refused to sign. I'll tell you why. When Haslam was the mayor of the city of Knoxville, he hired his opponent in the race, who lost to him by only a few points. This woman is environmental extremist Madeline Rogero, and she was hired as Director of Community Development. While in this position, she applied for the Smart Growth federal grant from Housing and Urban Development. The grant gave the city of Knoxville $4.3 million, and another $2.5 million came from local nonprofits. The city of Knoxville is a member of ICLEI, International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, but the name has been changed to Local Governments for Sustainability. We are now fighting smart growth thanks to our governor and the now new mayor of the city of Knoxville, his opponent, Madeline Rogero. In East Tennessee, the 5-county local regional smart growth program is called Plan East Tennessee. Because of my group, we actually did get one mayor to rescind being in Plan ET. So whether they want to admit it or not, we're down to 4 counties. If we could get my mayor to do it, we could kill it. So we're working on him. In East Tennessee, the 5-county local regional smart growth program is Plan East Tennessee Regional Plan for Livable Communities, a plan which will eliminate all our private property rights. Series 2 of Plan ET held a week of 6 forums in every one of the 5 regional communist counties: Blount, Knox, Anderson, Loudoun, and Union, who rescinded, the last one rescinded, asking for community input. Yet Plan ET's definition of community input seems to be neutralization of any expressed opposition to their plans of eliminating private property ownership under the guise of smart growth. Their community consensus is scripted for their predetermined outcome via their use of the evil Rand Corporation's mind-controlled Delphi technique. Rand developed the Delphi technique in the 50s for the U.S. Department of Defense, and it was originally intended for use as a psychological weapon during the Cold War. Wallace Robertson Todd architectural firm, headquartered in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is the Plan ET partner chosen to head these forums. They are paid $1.7 million to accomplish the predetermined outcome of these forums through facilitation of the Delphi technique. Wallace Robertson Todd was established in 1963 by David Wallace, and they are expert regional planners with the firm's origins rooted in sustainability. Every one of these men denied knowing anything about UN Agenda 21 because I personally asked them. The American Planning Association has continually recognized this firm and their principal leaders for their contributions to sustainability and smart growth. The APA even has a policy guide on smart growth. Governor Haslam helped spur residential and retail growth in the downtown area mainly by offering developers tax subsidies. This is part of Main Street USA, which is part of smart growth. He helped implement a master plan for the development of the South Knoxville Riverfront, which was given an outstanding planning award by the Tennessee chapter of American Planning Association. So he's quite familiar with the APA. Another top Wallace Robertson Todd principal is my favorite guy, David Rouse. His bio states off the website, David has a special interest in planning and design for sustainability, community engagement in the planning process, and capacity building for implementation. From Wallace Robertson Todd's website, it states, and I quote, Principal David Rouse is one of 11 members of the American Planning Association's Sustaining Places Task Force, established earlier this year to address the use of the comprehensive plan as the leading policy document and tool to help communities of all sizes achieve sustainability. The task force is part of the Sustaining Places Initiative, announced in March 2010 by APA President Bruce Knight and Chief Executive Officer Paul Farmer at the United Nations Fifth World Urban Forum in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Sustaining Places is a multi-year, multifaceted program to define the role of planning in addressing all human settlement issues relating to sustainability. Here's a quote I just love that came out of our Chattanooga newspaper. David Rouse again, UN Smart Growth architect of Wallace Robertson Todd, stated in the Chattanooga Times Free Press newspaper last fall, this is 2011, that he is, quote, committed to an open process and that property rights won't be impacted without the public's consent. Note, he didn't say not the property owner's consent. So, let me tell you how many people are making the decision for 800,000 people in 5 counties. This is the real rub with the community input nonsense this UN Agenda 21 Smart Growth is pulling. At the majority of these meetings, and I've attended all of them, there were 18 to 23 Plan ET members present who were the facilitators, the Delphi facilitators, along with Wallace Robertson Todd and our Metropolitan Planning Commission, who are all unelected staff. Then there were 20 to 25 invitees by these people from local governments, including local government planning committees, community development people, Oak Ridge National Labs, and the University of Tennessee. All of these invitees are employed by government and have a vested interest in this Plan ET coming to full fruition. Since I've attended all of these, and every table that I've sat at has had these invited shills, and they all answered the predetermined questions that the facilitators wanted the exact outcomes of. Then there were another 18 to 25 people, that's us, at every one of these meetings, who know exactly what Agenda 21 is really all about. The majority of meetings have approximately, and this includes both groups, 40 to 45 people, and that doesn't count the facilitators, you know, the few facilitators. This is the invitees, the shills, and us. If those of us against the UN Agenda 21 did not attend, the only people giving community input would be those invited government shills. And for me, that is a conflict of interest for them to even be voting or pushing a button. At one meeting that I attended, one of the women that was a shill actually admitted that she was a paid participant, but in fact, they all are because they are being paid by their offices to attend. By the way, these attendance numbers were also given by the Plan ET staff present and on their website, so it wasn't just me counting. The total number of attendees in the Series 2 6 forums that we attended, 2 in Knoxville, 1 in each of the others, the total number of people, including the shills and us, were 235. Of those 235 people, almost 100 of us were patriotic Americans fighting smart growth and Agenda 21. This means, folks, that 135 invited government employees We're deciding the future property rights of 800,000 people in the 5-county area of Plan ET. Not a very balanced input now, is it? This is what our governor brought to Knoxville when he was our mayor. He is now working to change Tennessee law regarding water rights. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to tell you about that, but I wrote a 15,000-word article on it. And he is benefiting $25 to $40 million net profit a year for Pilot Oil Flying J. And he tried to have his bagmen in the Senate and in the House codify the illegal activities he is doing with developers and mitigation in the state of Tennessee. The water in Tennessee belongs to every citizen. That's aquifers, rivers, lakes, puddles, everything, wetlands. It belongs to the citizens of Tennessee. Our governor tried to codify the law to guarantee this illegal activity was on the books that would have put all of the water in the state of Tennessee in the hands of the state government. That is the first domino that would kill us with UN Agenda 21. That's what my governor is up to. Our state is supposed to be the buckle of the Bible Belt. We're not. This is a phony conservative state filled with neocon Trotskyites. And as I stated in the beginning, a false friend is more dangerous than an open enemy. Our false friends are deceitful to all of the citizens of Tennessee because so many people think that if they vote for someone with an R behind their name, they will be safe. This is not true. We know from what Charlotte said in Carol Quigley's book, Tragedy and Hope, on page 1247, he stated in 1966 that the people will get angry and they will, quote unquote, vote the rascals out. But in comes another set of rascals with the same agenda. Nothing changes except the speak. They just change it to appease the people that are still fooled. So I urge you to do what we're doing in my little community and with my little group. You've got to vet every one of these people, and even if they lose, you've got to find out who is their opponents that were elected, everything they do, and at the next election, you've got to point this out to the public. You've got to do everything you can to get in the real servants. And if you don't know any, then run yourself. That's the only hope we have. Thank you.